Any questions on that? Okay. I want to comment on the events of the last week or week and or so. You know, out of a situation like this, nobody wins. Everybody loses. Mrs. Biddle went forward with our principal, did not disclose all of the information that she should have disclosed. She then met with the superintendent. She threatened the superintendent that if he didn't comply with her request, that she would go to the newspaper and smear his name and his reputation throughout the area. I think Mrs. Biddle has been found out to be the person that she is, and that her efforts, which did not succeed, were designed to commit a fraud on this district, to take services from this district that were not permitted. Next, Mr. Stubenbort jumped into the mix and unfortunately fired the oven even more. I think he comes out, I think he loses because I think he's seen as a political opportunist who does nothing more than jump into a situation and exploit it, a tragic situation, the death of the father, and exploit it for his own political gain in an effort to run for mayor. And that's truly tragic. Mr. Short loses because he's the object of direct physical threats on his life. These are the collateral damages that occur when board members and individuals from the community choose to take the steps that they took, perhaps without recognizing that the impact, and in this particular case, the impact on Mr. Short was terrible, absolutely terrible. Didn't they think about that? Didn't they care about that? About his wife, his children? He loses. School board members got nasty, hateful, mean-spirited emails from people all over the place. Probably many not from the district, but some from the district, because the newspaper failed to do the kind of job in investigating and put out poorly researched information. Almost feel like it's designed to fire up folks so that they buy more newspapers. And that's really unfortunate. So now perhaps the writers will begin to understand that when they fail to do research properly, when they fail to do their due diligence, how it hurts people, real people in our district. The board loses because we receive all of these threats. And then finally, the community loses because it's another black eye on Gateway, which never really needed to occur. When Mrs. Biddle and Mr. Stubenbort did not get their way, they decided to go to the public. We take hundreds of votes throughout the year, and we don't agree on all of them, but we don't go to the public castigating the board. When we don't get our way, we don't go out to the newspapers and bash the district. In executive committee meetings, or in this particular meeting, when Mr. Stubenbort didn't get his way, when it was clear that the board was moving to support the superintendent, he stood up, told all of us to go for ourselves. Turn that off, please. Turned to all of us and said, go for ourselves. And perhaps for those who are a little bit hard of hearing on the board, he said it again. It's disgraceful. It's demeaning. None of us run to be assaulted and offended like that. Absolutely uncalled for. I've been on boards for years and years and years, and I've never seen that happen. Never. And it's a shame. When you don't get your way, Mrs. Biddle, Steve O'Donnell, Chad Stubenbort, Scott Williams, you move on and you work together. You don't express to people how you feel about them personally in the meeting. You don't go out and fire up the public. You don't create a set of circumstances that demeans the superintendent, that potentially could harm the superintendent. You don't create a set of circumstances that could harm board members who have kids at home. And by the way, some of these threats were directed at them. You don't do that. You work together. You don't use situations like this to advance your political career. You don't use situations like this to steal money from the Gateway School District. You don't do that. It's shameful behavior. And it's the kind of behavior that resulted in the motion to censure. I hope you take that seriously, Chad. I, like you, I've said to you on any number of occasions, 2 or 3, I've sort of laid out my thoughts about what might help you. And I understand advice is, worth what you pay for it. You're not paying for it, and perhaps you consider it worthless. I hope you take just the mere fact that a censure was placed on the table against you and understand what was being said. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Byrne?
At this time, I would like to make a motion. I make a motion to publicly censor Board Member Chad Steubenport for the following reasons. 1, his inappropriateness, use of power as president by influencing and hiring and promotion of friends to positions within Gateway School District. 2, for the illegal use of school vehicle and not being on the insurance for the vehicle, putting the district at risk in case of an accident. 3, acting against the administration's recommendation on contract negotiations with directors of maintenance and Teamsters contract. 4, pressuring and attempting to manipulate employees to award contracts to Friends for phone systems and lawn care. 5, for attempting to advance the interest of private companies contrary to the board's decision against the company. 6, using a district vehicle to pick up a presidential candidate who was supposed to have signed a waiver, and in fact no waiver was ever signed. Using the Gateway CSE PTO Facebook to raise money for private gain. 8, using disgraceful and demeaning language to board members in executive session. 9, using the public and social media in an attempt to force the board members to reverse their decision on policy matters. 10, using the Gateway School District and Educational Institute to further his political agenda. 11, ongoing efforts to disrupt the relationship between Gateway School District and the municipality of Monroeville. 12, and otherwise ethical behavior. I am requesting that a public censure against Chad Steubenport be placed in the minutes of the Gateway School Board meeting, and would request the board president remove Chad Steubenport from the following committees: the Policy Committee, the Negotiation Committee, Security Committee, and the COG. Furthermore, I would request the President direct that Chad Steubenport be no longer able to speak publicly for or against the school district. I would request a motion second on this.
I second it.
Questions, comments?
I have one just quick one. I thought we were supposed to try to get along. Here's how this started, actually. But I guess I'm bewildered because I thought that the words came out that we were supposed to try to get along.
I have a comment and a request. I think the list of issues has been litigated over the past year, discussed in great detail by board members, and so I'm formally asking the President to call the question.
I would request that we table this because I had no idea you were presenting these, and if you expect me to vote on 10 chastising items within 3 minutes of hearing about it, I don't think I can do that.
I wouldn't expect anything else but to receive any information last minute, but I would request from the solicitor.
Well, there's a motion to table on, and I don't think there's
Is there a motion to
Is
table? Is there a
second?
second to table?
Okay.
Second.
Now there's no debate.
No, just no
Roll
debate.
call vote on
Table?
the table.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Mr. Ritter.
I want to table it, so that would be an aye vote. Is that true?
Correct.
So I vote aye.
Mr. Steubenport.
No, I'd like to talk about it.
Mrs. Warning.
No.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mrs. Byrne?
No.
Mrs. Cerrucci?
Aye.
Mr. Lapsevich?
No.
Mr. Nola?
Aye.
Motion fails, 5-4.
So, Mr. President, I call the question for the reasons that I've previously raised.
Bruce, a few questions for you. First of all, what are your thoughts overall, I guess? And second of all, legality-wise, what has been brought up this evening?
I've been doing this more than 2 weeks. I've seen a censor once before at a municipality. In Pennsylvania, as opposed to some other states, the censor is really a term of art, a term that describes feelings of, and if you look up the definition, you'll see that it's a public rebuke. It carries no other legal weight. Certainly no one on this board can remove a board member from the board. Only a court can do that after just cause is shown. But my thoughts are that there's been a motion and a second to public rebuke, or a public rebuke being put on the record. As far as removal from positions, committees, I think that's up to the president of the board. I mean, that's what we've followed in the past. The president of the board makes those appointments. He either chooses to follow the request or not follow the request. If you're asking me, can it be done? Sure, it can be done. It's being done. What legal effect it carries is just that. It's a public rebuke, and nothing more can be said of it other than it'll be in part of the minutes as Ms. Warning has requested.
So I don't lose my birthday or anything?
You still stay the same age.
So my call for the question, and I've called the question.
Roll call vote, Barney.
Is there a second?
Wait, what's the motion?
She made a motion to
She made a
censor
motion to censure on those 12
items.
points, Mr. Stubenbort, and that's on the table for a vote.
And this closes our
That closes
ability to
debate.
talk about it.
Correct.
That's right.
Well, no, it doesn't. It closes it?
Yes.
Do we need a second?
No.
No.
It's just a call for the question. He's indicated he asked for a roll call. The only way that
No discussion?
No.
there's no discussion. If this board is unhappy with that decision, you have to make a motion to continue discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to continue discussion.
Now you take a vote on that, and there's no discussion on that.
Okay, Neil, you made the motion to continue the discussion, and
Chad second.
Chad second. Okay. I'm
Roll
sorry.
call.
Bear with me. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenbort.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
No.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mrs. Byrne.
No.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Yes.
Mr. Lapsevich.
No.
Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Motion fails, 5-1.
Okay, the vote is to be called now. Roll call on the original motion to censor.
Hang in there. Okay. This is to censor. Okay. Mr. Stubenbort.
No.
Mrs. Warning.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mrs. Byrne.
Yes.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
No.
Mr. Lapsevich.
No.
Mr. Nola.
No.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mr. Ritter.
No.
Noes have it.
No censor. 5-2-3. Missing a vote.
1, 2,
No,
3,
it's
4, 5, 6.
Six.
6-3.
6-3.
6-3, no.
Steve Stephenbow, voted for the censure.
Val, do you have anything else?
Not at this time.